She thought you were just being quiet, that your silence was temporary, that you'd come back like you always did. But what she didn't expect was that this time, the silence wasn't confusion or pain, it was clarity. It wasn't distance, it was detachment. And as each day passed without a message, without a like, without even a glance, she started to feel something she never anticipated: regret. Not because you disappeared in anger, but because you vanished with peace. And now, that silence, the one she once ignored, has become the loudest thing in her world. Section 1. The first shift in silence. When you go silent, everything begins to shift, not instantly for you, but deeply for her. On the surface, she might act like she doesn't care. Day one rolls in and she barely reacts. But don't mistake that stillness for indifference. She notices. She feels it. Yet she convinces herself this quiet from you is just another short-lived moment. One of those phases where you pull away only to circle back like before. So, she remains unfazed, scrolling her feed, posting something cute, maybe even slipping in a veiled quote about knowing her worth or not settling. A subtle jab masked as empowerment. But as the silence stretches, something begins to change. By day 2 or 3, she still hasn't sent a message. But now she's checking, watching. She opens your profile, views your story, searching for any hint that you're still there, hovering like you always used to. She's not in panic mode yet, but the curiosity creeps in, and that curiosity is the first crack in her armor. She starts revisiting your last conversation in her mind. Did she push too far? Say something that crossed a line? Why does your silence feel different this time? She won't voice it. Not to you, not even to herself, but your absence is beginning to take up space in her thoughts. A space she never imagined you'd occupy so completely. The truth is, she got used to being the center, the one you always try to fix things with. The woman you came back to, even after things grew distant or tense. But now you're not reacting, not liking, not watching. You're not giving her anything. And that silence? It's not indifference. It's strength. Each day you hold that silence, her inner voice grows louder. Not from anger, but from uncertainty. Because now, she isn't just wondering if you're upset. She's starting to fear you're actually done. And that fear is when everything begins to shift. Section 2. When doubt begins to bloom. By the time day 3 fades into day 4, something deeper begins to settle inside her. She's no longer just checking your profile out of curiosity. Now, she's watching your energy. And that's where the shift starts to pull at her. You see, before, she could read your patterns like a script. She knew exactly when your silence would unravel, when your self-restraint would slip into a quick story view, a soft message like just checking in. It was predictable, and in that predictability, she felt secure. Even if she didn't reply right away, she knew you'd come back. That was her power, your consistency, your presence. But this time is different. There's no text, no digital signal, no subtle breadcrumb left behind to show you're still watching. And that is what unsettles her. Because now, there's no trace of you, no evidence that you're lingering in the background. And that's when the realization hits her like a wave. You're no longer playing the game she thought she was winning. You've exited the emotional loop she relied on. You're not angry. You're not cold. You're not reactive. You're just gone. And that kind of silence? It feels real. It's not a performance. It's not a tactic. It's evolution. And she feels it more than she thought she ever would. The days grow heavier now. Not because you're not speaking, but because your absence is loud. Louder than any argument. More intense than any emotion she thought she could provoke. Because she's not just missing the messages. She's missing the version of herself that mattered to you. And that feeling? It lingers. The longer your silence stays, the more it becomes a mirror, reflecting everything she refused to see. Her actions, her distance, her assumptions that you'd always be there regardless of how she treated you. And now, the man she overlooked, the one who showed up, gave freely, stayed steady, that man is gone. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in quiet strength. You evolved in the shadows, without needing her to notice. And now, the silence she once took for weakness has become your greatest form of power. Section 3. The shift she didn't see coming. By the time day 5 or 6 rolls around, something unfamiliar starts to grow inside her, doubt. Not just in the situation, but in herself. See, most people believe women only begin to feel regret weeks or months later. But when the silence is genuine, when your detachment isn't a strategy but a shift in being, the internal narrative starts changing quickly. She doesn't broadcast it, but in the quiet moments, the thoughts become louder. She starts comparing, not in conversation with others, but within her own mind, where truth lives unfiltered. She remembers how you made her feel, calm, grounded, emotionally safe. She replays the conversations, the quiet presence you offered without demanding anything. She begins to contrast that feeling with what she's experiencing now. Empty messages, hollow attention, shallow gestures that only remind her of what she's missing. Because even if there's someone else texting her now, dropping compliments, reacting to her stories, it all feels like background noise. You weren't noise. You were home. And that comparison cuts deeper than she expected. It becomes more than missing you. It becomes confusion, disorientation. She doesn't understand why this quiet hits harder than any fight. Why your absence weighs heavier than any word she ever heard from you. And that's when it dawns on her. It's because you were real. You weren't a placeholder. You weren't just passing time. You were present in ways most men aren't. And now, that presence is gone. Not snatched away in spite or anger. Just no longer there. Now, she scrolls through your old messages. Not to reply. Not even to think about responding. But to feel something again. To remember what it was like when she still had access to your energy. When she still felt in control of the connection. And that's when she does something that even her pride can't protect her from. She starts blaming herself. She questions what went wrong, what she said, what she didn't say, what signs she gave or failed to give. She replays all the missed opportunities to show that she cared when you were still showing up, still available, still emotionally open. It's no longer about you walking away. It's about realizing you were giving her chances and she didn't take them. That's the truth she can't unsee. It wasn't your silence that caused the distance. It was hers. And your final silence? That's what made it permanent. Now, she's not just uncomfortable. She's haunted. Section 4. When silence turns to power. Now she's no longer just feeling a little uneasy. She's haunted. Haunted by a thought she can't escape. Maybe you've already accepted the idea of never hearing from her again. Maybe you've already let go, found peace, and someone new is now experiencing the very energy she once believed only she had access to. That possibility, it rewrites everything she thought she understood about you. It reshapes what losing you actually means. Because by day 7 and beyond, something subtle yet powerful begins to shift. The energy changes. She doesn't feel like she's watching from a safe distance anymore. Now, it feels like she's standing on the outside looking in. Before, you were emotionally available, even in silence. There was always a faint thread, some subtle signal that said, "I'm still here if you reach out." But now, even that thread feels severed. What's left behind isn't bitterness or coldness, it's uncertainty, mystery. That's what really unsettles her. The mystery of not knowing what you're thinking, of not knowing whether she still holds any space in your world, of not knowing if this new version of you, the one who doesn't chase, doesn't flinch, doesn't fall back into old patterns, is here to stay. And here's what most people don't realize. Women aren't afraid of being rejected. What truly terrifies them is being forgotten. And your silence? It's starting to feel like an eraser. It feels like you've emotionally checked out, closed the book, and moved forward without needing applause, validation, or explanation. That kind of emotional discipline, that quiet, calm sense of control, is rare, and it carries more weight than any message you could have sent. She thought your silence would make her feel powerful, like she won. But instead, it's unraveling her confidence, one quiet day at a time. She starts second-guessing herself. Not outwardly. She'll still post like she's unbothered, like she's glowing, like she's protecting her peace. But inside, she's wondering if she completely misread you. If she mistook your kindness and patience for weakness. And if now, she's witnessing the evolution of a man she never truly understood until he was already gone. Because what's playing on her mind isn't just your absence, it's the version of you she no longer has access to. You're not giving her your energy. You're not reacting, not engaging, not waiting in the wings. You're just living. And that's what flips everything. Section 5. When she realizes it's too late. The moment she senses that your emotions no longer revolve around her. When she feels that you've detached, not just distanced yourself, her entire sense of control starts to crumble. Suddenly, she's not sure if she can still affect you, if she still holds any power in your world. That's when she starts pulling on invisible strings. She watches your story and deletes her view right after. She posts vague quotes about missing someone, hoping you'll read between the lines. She tells herself she's healed, but 2 hours later, she's checking your page again. And still, there's no response. That's when your silence stops being quiet. It becomes commanding. It's the kind of stillness that hits hard, because it's coming from a man who no longer seeks closure. He doesn't need to be heard. He doesn't need her to get it. He simply let go and found peace all on his own. And once a woman feels that shift, feels that distance and realizes it's not going to close just because she finally feels the weight of it, it cuts deeper than anything else. Because for the first time, she's the one wishing you'd come back. And here's where something changes in her thoughts. Something unusual begins. She starts rewriting the past, not to lie to herself, but because your absence is now forcing her to see it all through a lens she never used before. All those times you were patient, she now sees them as rare. All the support you gave when she was unsure, she now realizes how deeply she misread your value. This isn't guilt, it's realization. And it stings, because she's surrounded by attention, by noise, by options, but nothing hits like you did. The conversations feel shallow. The flattery feels rehearsed. And slowly, painfully, she begins to feel the contrast. You were the rare one. The one who brought calm. The one who stayed grounded. Who listened without demanding. Who showed up without needing applause. Now she sees that for what it really was. Something she didn't appreciate until it was too far gone. The worst part? She can't talk about it. Not to her friends. Not to her family. Because if she did, she'd have to admit she misjudged you. That she didn't see your worth when it mattered most. And pride. It will keep her trapped in silence far longer than her heart wants her to be. But that silence won't save her. Because deep down, she knows, even in a room full of admirers, none of them feel like you. None of them move like you. None of them create peace just by being present. None of them challenge her inner world the way your calm confidence did. Not because you played games, but because your silence was real. That's the difference. You weren't out to be missed. You were just done giving. And that stillness, that self-respect, that shift into peace, it's what echoes louder than any goodbye ever could. Because while she was used to being pursued, admired, and kept on a pedestal, now, every day that passes without you chips away at that illusion. You didn't take the power back with anger or noise. You reclaimed it with presence, with silence, with stillness. And ironically, that's what rattles her the most. Because while you've said absolutely nothing, you've said everything. And she feels it every time she scrolls, every time she's alone with her thoughts, every time she tries to distract herself and still finds you circling in her mind. You're not just the man she used to know. Now, you're the standard. And once a man becomes the standard, every man after him will fall short. So let this be your reminder. Your silence isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's not the absence of words. It's the presence of growth, of boundaries, of self-worth. You don't need to chase. You don't need to prove your value to someone who couldn't see it when it was right in front of them. A woman who only realizes your worth once you've gone quiet never truly saw you. She only saw what she could gain from you. But now, she sees something else. She sees a man who outgrew her games. A man who stopped feeding her ego. A man who no longer seeks validation because he finally understood. The one who stays grounded when everything feels chaotic. That's the one who holds the real power. And that kind of presence, it leaves a mark. Long after the messages have stopped. Long after the memories start to fade. Long after she's surrounded by others who talk more, offer more, promise more, but feel far less. In the end, the man who walks away in silence, with dignity, with clarity, that's the man she will remember. Not because he begged, not because he argued, not even because he stayed longer than he should have, but because when he left, the silence was louder than anything she'd ever heard. And she'll never forget how it felt.